you happen to have an extra agenda? To order the regular meeting of the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees for Monday, March the 6th. It is 6:30 p.m. We're going to start with approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. That is item 1. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Marley. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schott. All right, do we have any comments or corrections to the agenda for this evening? Mr. Wong.
Regarding the high ability committees for discussion only.
Okay. So Mr. Wong is interested in adding an agenda for discussion on the High Ability Committee. This is something that Mr. Wong and I have had some correspondence about. I do have a response. It's in my notes for information to the board. But is there a second for including this as an agenda item in tonight's meeting?
I second.
A second from Dr. Yin. All those are there any questions for Mr. Wong about this additional agenda item? All those in favor of adding a high ability committee discussion to tonight's agenda, please indicate aye. Raise of hand if you're interested in adding that to the agenda this evening. Show of hands. Okay, we have 3. Dr. Yin, Mr. Wong, and Mrs. Mumford have voted aye. All those opposed to adding this to the agenda tonight, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion does not pass. That item is not added to the agenda this evening. Are there any other amendments or changes to tonight's agenda?
Without a discussion, how do we know why people support to add it or people don't support to add it? And so then what will...
So when I called for discussion, that would have been the time to put discussion out there. I'm sorry, did I not call for discussion? Did I miss? I did call, okay. So when I called for discussion, no one said anything, and so then that would have been the opportunity to discuss. But now that motion has not passed.
Okay, so to do discussion, then we need to wait till next meeting and propose it again. Then when you call for discussion, we discuss. That will be how we do it.
No, you would have just done it a few minutes or a few seconds ago.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean, since we missed this opportunity, it means if we want to do it again, we need to wait till next month.
Or you could ask for it to be added to the agenda during the month. You don't necessarily need to wait for a meeting. I do have a response to the question or information to the board that I'll give at the end of the meeting, so perhaps that might clarify for everyone with additional information tonight. We might find it isn't a meeting or a topic that we want to discuss in a meeting. So we can just kind of do it that way. Mm-hmm. Ideally, when it comes to adding agenda items, that would be kind of done collaboratively prior to the meeting through the weekly board chair notes. So you would put a comment, I'd like to see this added to the agenda. So in my board chair notes, when I say next meeting is this, agenda is in development, that would be where you would comment and say, I would really like to see this added to the agenda in the board chair note comments. And then we could have that conversation. But that did not happen this month.
Okay.
Does that clarify your question?
So the conversation among the board will happen during the meeting rather than before the meeting, because sounds like Mr. Wang already contacted you regarding it.
Right. He sent me an email and I asked him if he wanted to pursue anything to put it in the chair notes, and he did not do that. So there was no further information. Because he had asked it and I was aware that he might have a question, I did go ahead and research and answer for him so that I could be prepared to address it, but it was not added in any way.
Okay, yeah, since we heard a lot of concerns about this issue, so we wish at some point we can discuss about it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there no other changes to the agenda? Mr. Wong?
Can I have some questions regarding this issue?
Okay, but it's not on our agenda for tonight.
Yeah,
So,
not this issue regarding the procedures, how an item can be added on the agenda. Is that right time or something some other time? I can do other time, that's fine, but
well, so I wrote that direction down in a chair note and explained the process and then also sent you the policy that was connected to that. So-
yes, that's the question I'm asking about the policy. So procedures, we add item on the agenda. Can I do that right now or sometime later?
Well, you just asked for that to be done and it did not pass.
Yes.
Right.
My question is this procedure. I mean, when we have vote motions, we have one people propose and then second, and then we can vote for that. And when we talk about something, put something on top on the agenda, I think there should be have lower threshold for that requirement. You see what I mean? We don't need, what I'm saying is we don't need to go through the whole board voting for that. I'm just, if, say, for example, you have motions here, that means one people submit and then other people second, and there will be motion. And then after that, everybody can vote. But for item on this agenda, just for discussion purpose, I think we'll have lower threshold. One people propose and then other people second, that should be on the agenda, and then we can talk about that.
Okay,
That makes sense?
I understand your question. Please
Okay,
go ahead,
sure.
Mr. Schott.
In the interest of our guests who are here, we can have this discussion. Let's do it at the end of the meeting. Let's let our honored guests be honored so they can get on with their
Okay,
lives.
thank you for that. Thank you for that. We do follow Robert's Rules of Order, our parliamentary procedure, which is what governs all of our actions here at a meeting. If I could please cycle back to getting a vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda for our meeting, please indicate with a show of hands. Okay, that is 6, Mrs. Julian, and all of those who vote against approval of the agenda this evening, please indicate. Mr. Wong votes nay. The motion carries. We will move on to item 2, approval of the minutes of the February 13th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of School Trustees. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Austin, is there a second? Second by Mr. Marley. Questions, comments, changes to the minutes from our last regular meeting? Mrs. Mumford.
I make a motion to move the approval of the minutes to after the academic recognition, as we still have a discussion of errors that we need to discuss.
Okay.
So that would be a motion to postpone.
A motion to postpone the approval of the minutes to the end of this evening's meeting.
Just after the academic recognition. Just move them up before this one, where we discuss it. Or wherever you want.
Okay.
Before new business.
We would move it in before new business, correct? Okay, can I get a second on Mrs. Mumford's motion, please? Second from Mr. Wong. All of those in favor of moving the approval of our February 13 minutes to after or just before new business, please indicate with a show of hands. All those in favor? Okay. That is 6 votes aye. All of those opposed to moving those? Did you vote on that?
How say you, Brad?
We're going to call that 7-0, Mrs. Julian. Mr. Marley also votes. So we have moved that now underneath. Unfinished business, we have none. Academic achievement, special recognition. Our West Lafayette Elementary School Good Citizenship Club Life Skills of Cooperation. Who is presenting on that this evening? Hello, Mrs. Laney. Come on up.
My amazing cooperation friends. So, come up with me. Come on up here. 4 of them. Okay, we're going to do this in age order. So, Alan, come stand over here with me first. This is Alan's son. Alan, who did you bring with you tonight?
Dad.
Your mom and your dad. Yes, there they are. And Alan was recognized in kindergarten as a good citizen for cooperation. And I got to sit down with each of the kids today and just ask, why do you think you were selected to be the Cooperation Good Citizen? And when I asked Alan that question, he said that he thought he was chosen to represent kindergarten because he likes to help people, right? And you like to help clean up, and that's a super cooperation skill, and share. And I can't think of any better reasons to be in the club. Then I asked Mrs. Combs, who is his teacher, why she selected him to be the representative. And she said, Alan is a leader in our classroom. He is eager to jump in and help work with other students if they need help during center time. He is kind and a great friend. He loves drawing and creating for his classmates. When he faces difficult things, he does it with a smile and a growth mindset. I know that Alan is going to do great things in this world. We are so blessed to have him in our classroom. That's awesome. Yay. Careful. All right, Jop, come on up. This is a first grader, Jop Singh, and he is in Miss Gould's classroom, right? And when I talked to him today, he said he thinks he was chosen to be the Cooperation Good Citizen because he always says please, and he asks if he can play with friends, and he likes to help others. And I think that's, do you want to add anything to that? Who did you bring with you tonight?
My little brother and my mom and dad.
What's your little brother's name?
Person.
Oh, there he is. He's a doll. When I asked Miss Gould why you were selected, here's what she wrote. Jop was selected for this month's Good Citizenship Club nomination because he always models what cooperative conversation should look like in the classroom. He participates and shares his ideas, but is also supportive of what others have to say. He uses respectful language to express himself, and when he disagrees, he stays focused and collaborates with his classmates to achieve small group and class-wide goals. We are so fortunate to have Jop in our classroom community. Yay! We have a second grader, Ian Ponchal, who is in Mr. Warner's class. And when we sat down and chatted today, Ian said that he thinks he was chosen to be the Cooperation Good Citizen because he is always quiet in the hallways. Yep. He focuses on his work. And one thing I did find out, though, was sometimes at home, you did admit that you and your brothers sometimes play pranks on your parents, don't you? Sometimes when it's time to do work at home, he and his brother hide. And I thought that was funny. Yep. So I don't blame you because I don't like to do work at home either. So, but Mr. Warner said that you were chosen because you are such a wonderful person to be around. You get along well with all of your classmates and other students in math club. You are a very dependable student in the classroom. You work well with others. And when others around him need help and the teacher is busy, Ian is the first one of the students to the students will gladly go ask him for help. This is because they know he will be patient and explain the concepts to them so that he understands it better. I am proud to say that Ian is part of our classroom, school, and community. Way to go. Nice job. We're proud of you. Good job. All right, Charlize. Charlize Erickson is a third grader in Mrs. Kriebel's class. And Charlize says that she thinks she was chosen because she just goes with whatever. And I loved that answer. That's such a cooperative thing to do. Even if she's not into it, she said, she goes along with it anyway. That's great. And when I asked her teacher why she was chosen, she said, I chose Charlize to be the member of the Good Citizen Club because she is a wonderful role model to her classmates. Charlize will jump in and help a friend or do a task without being asked. She never draws attention to herself when she does this. She simply does the right thing no matter what. Charlize represents the very best of what the Good Citizenship Club is all about. Nice job. And parents, if you want to take your child to the hallway, we can do pictures. And yay, thank you for sharing your wonderful friends with us.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, families. All right, so we are going to move ahead with item 4 here, communication from the audience. We have 3 people signed up. Up first, Mrs. Amanda Hart.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? I promise I'll use my teacher voice if you can't hear me. Hello, my name is Amanda Hart. I am the family consumer science teacher at West Lafayette Junior Senior High. And I have a quick statement. I know that you have a lot of business to accomplish tonight. And I see on the agenda that there are some policy revisions that are going to be discussed for first reading. As I was going through the agenda for tonight, and I was thinking about what those policy revisions might include, I was thinking about staff appreciation and how we communicate what appreciation is with the people that we are around. To me, reflecting on this, appreciation looks like relationship building. So this would be things like speaking to and getting to know the wide variety of staff who work and support our students every day. To me, relationship building and good communication develops an understanding of and an appreciation for the scope and depth of the tasks that occur to provide our students with the best educational experience possible. Often our hard work and expertise go unnoticed when things go smoothly. It's kind of like your car. You don't really pay attention to it when things are going right. To me, relationship building and ties in with good communication when we listen to concerns and collaborate with staff to determine solutions. I know WLEA has worked very hard to develop this collegial and collaborative environment through the discussion process. And I know I look forward to our next meeting that's coming up here in March, so we can continue to do that. To me, relationship building and good communication help create an environment that is both positive and uplifting. Staff feel valued and comfortable when they're surrounded by a culture of professionalism and collaboration. Right? I know that no person is an island. We all work together and no one is perfect. I hope that you, as a board, will continue to work together to build us up and unite our West Side community. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Up next, we have Mr. Don Collar.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. At the last meeting, there was extended conversation in regards to the board chair notes. And it had to do with transparency, I believe. One of the big items in this past school board election had to do with transparency. I would urge the board to communicate through the board chair notes and sign your names. Last week, there was a move to make sure that everybody knew how everybody voted by name. And that's good. On the other hand, there seems to be some reticence, at least as I heard the conversation, over signing your names when you make comments. And I think that the comments should be public so that everybody knows how everybody on the board is thinking. So I would urge you all to respond and make comments to the board chair notes after every monthly meeting, and put your names to it so that everybody knows what you're all thinking. And because that's a part of transparency. And I think that's something that's very important. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate the work you all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mrs. Lisa Mills.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak here. I'm going to start out with actually some good news here. This past weekend, I spent the whole entire weekend actually celebrating the written accomplishments of our West Side students. 2 of our 9th graders this year were finalists in the Indiana Repertory Theater's Young Playwrights competition. That was out of 228 scripts. They were in the top 5 in the state, so it was very exciting. 39 of our 7th through 12th graders, their student writers, were honored at the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. 2 students, sophomore Corey David and 8th grader Stella Bates, had 2 of the 5 top pieces of writing in the state and are going to nationals. So that's very exciting for them. They were deemed to be distinguished by the American Voices Award. So I guess where I want to segue is that these people worked very hard all year. They discovered the power of words and ideas because words matter. How we communicate our fears, our desires, our needs, our criticisms, our understanding of a situation, and our hopes, this all is wrapped up in words, tone, connotation, and communication. As a school community, West Lafayette has always thrived on the beauty, power, and inspiration of our unity in diversity, honoring different opinions, listening and reflecting and conversing for deeper understanding. This is what my experience has been for the last 20 years as a parent of 2 West Lafayette grads, and I never dreamed I'd be teaching here, but here I am 20 years later as a teacher. And then about 12 years ago, getting involved in our association. And so I have been honored by my association to be able to be on the discussion team for the last 9 years. There's been a lot of people who've come and gone in that time, but the tenor has always been the same, that we can talk, that we can express our opinions and views and hear what the board and administrators have to say as well. So when one of you speaks to our community, your voice carries the weight and the capacity to inspire unity or create frustration and discontent because your words matter. When any one of you chooses to take the business and concerns of our school to social media or to disseminate your opinions to the greater community, your words have the capacity to instill confidence and celebrate the great things that are going on in our school community and classrooms, or to sow seeds of division, discontent, and skepticism, because your words matter. The teachers of this corporation are a unit, an extended family, a group of individuals who have all come together and committed themselves to the service of the children in this community. And I say that with pride, and I believe all of my colleagues behind me would agree. We work together. We value one another. We learn from one another. We use our words to inspire, to build community, to teach students to think, be, do, create. Our words matter. So, West Lafayette Board, I'm simply asking you, I know that you're a group of individuals with diverse opinions, which is good. Okay, I mean, we teach that to our students. It's good to have disagreement and learn how to talk and think and listen. So I'm simply asking you, as myself, as a group of individuals, your different opinions and your expertise matters, but together you set the tone for our entire community. Whether you exude optimism, team building, appreciation, and a desire to learn and listen to your community of parents, students, and teachers, I ask that you carefully consider the message you send to all of us because words matter. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the February 13th, 2023 regular meeting. We have a motion on the table. We have a second on the table, and I believe we are to the discussion portion of this item. Mrs. Mumford.
At the February meeting, we discussed the errors in the organizational minutes, and those 2 errors have still remained. There was 2 votes. They weren't strictly yes or no votes, and they still have not been included in the minutes.
Okay. I believed that those had been corrected, and so what votes are you looking for, Mrs. Mumford?
So the 2 remaining errors that are not covered is the voting for vice president and secretary. We did not vote yes or no for Brad Marley. We either voted for Brad Marley or for UAN for vice president. The vote counts in the minutes should be changed to reflect this. Next, we either voted for Amy Austin or for Daisha Mumford for secretary. The vote counts in the minutes should change to reflect this. Currently, they just are sharing a yes or no, which was what had happened for Rachel Witt for president.
Okay.
There were first and second motions for both of those items.
I understand that we discussed those in the last meeting, and I don't know that it benefits anyone for us to rediscuss those items. I would just like to call this to a vote at this point. All of those in favor of approving the minutes from our February 13th, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees with the 2 changes Mrs. Mumford has noted, would you please indicate a yes by show of hand?
Meaning you're adding the changes?
Yes. Okay.
Just clarify. So what is question? Are you on the vote?
The question is, if everyone who I have asked for call to vote, affirming the approval of the minutes from the February meeting with the 2 changes specifically noted by Mrs. Mumford.
Oh, with 2 changes.
Yes.
Okay.
So all of those in favor of approving those minutes with the additional 2 changes that Mrs. Mumford has noted, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0, Mrs. Julian. Thank you. Moving on to item 3, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Mrs. Falk. Thank you for being here tonight and giving us an update on your work, Mrs. Falk.
You're welcome. Sorry, my cap key is not working. Okay. Brandon, what is the PIN number for the device?
You got it.
556 18. Oh. All right.
Good evening. My name is Laura Falk, Diversity Initiative Specialist for West Lafayette School Corporation, and I'm here tonight to briefly update you on our most recent professional development session and give a quick overview of our continued efforts related to inclusion, equity, and access. As most of you know, our last PD occurred on February 10th. Students had the day off while staff members, teachers, paraprofessionals, and our administration spent the day working on subjects that would help further increase expertise in their field. We were honored to have many school board members attend the session. Traditionally, PDs are often less popular because of the format, so we decided to mix it up a bit. Keeping equity at the center of discussion, we wanted to provide opportunities for our staff to choose the topics they found interesting and relevant. From this discussion, a mini conference format became our focus. Work started with our teacher equity teams representing each building. First, each group brainstormed a list of topics they felt were most relevant to their buildings. Next, staff members used a Google form to share their top six interests. In addition, our I Empower group, predominantly marginalized representation, also came up with some of the topics that were chosen by the building team in the high school. Since we had 3 hours as our time limit, we determined that 6 topics would be our target. Collaborating with Dr. Wessel Powell and her colleagues at Purdue, we worked for over 2 months developing our breakout sessions. Again, the response for participation was overwhelming. 12 faculty members volunteered their time to assist in creating content for our PD. The morning of the 10th consisted of 3 45-minute sessions that staff pre-registered for and communicated to our development team. Our keynote speakers included our student equity team, who responded to a list of questions posed by our teacher equity teams across the corporation. Afterwards, staff was asked to complete an exit form asking for their feedback. With a 45% response rate so far, we have the following data. About 97% felt the session met or exceeded their expectations. And we also learned about topics that people were interested in learning more about, so our future PD offerings will reflect our staff's interest. Again, honing in on equitable practices for our staff. The importance of equity in our lives was expressed in this survey, as 97% of the respondents appreciated the ability to choose their sessions. This attention to equity, even though it was a minor adjustment, can show how one's mindset regarding PDs can shift towards being more positive, which helps everyone stay engaged and energized during these all-staff sessions. Shifting our focus now, I want to give you a brief overview of our corporation's continued efforts under the umbrella of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Many discussions, conversations, and reflections are ongoing between staff, students, and administration that are not my stories to share. The work is continuing, though, and I will highlight a few things that I feel are appropriate to share tonight. Teachers have the option to request lessons throughout the year. Some are needs-based, some come up in discussions, and some are created based on belonging, inclusion, and access topics. When working on lessons, I emphasize that as I still have the mindset of a general education teacher, I always consider the state standards when creating lessons. However, if someone uses the N word, R word, or F word, I want to ask those who are wondering, what standard are we supposed to use for these? In my doctoral program, I lean into the extensive resources of my professors, colleagues, information, and articles that assist me in determining the proper way to address these remarks while keeping our students always at the forefront of my mind, because I will not ignore those types of words being used against our students and our staff members. Doug and I have collaborated creating spaces to talk to our bus drivers. They are the first employees to greet our students and the last faces of Westside in the evening. We started meeting to determine ways to create a community on the bus and ensure that they were seen, valued, and heard in the corporation. Doug, the bus drivers, and I continue to check in with each other to find ways for continued support. The I Empower group members talked about formally applying to be a formal club. This year, we petitioned to establish the Black Student Union, which was adopted in January. We meet bi-monthly and welcome anyone interested in learning about Black and African American culture, history, and traditions. Our CCDD club, celebrating cultural differences and diversity, was also established in February. This club highlights the many cultures, religions, and ethnicities we are blessed to have in our student population. This club is also open to anyone and meets on a bi-monthly basis. I also work with teachers and students and offer one-to-one support for those who may need an additional ear to sort things out and learn more about the rich diversity that exists in our corporation. From Purdue's Cranert Business School of Management, Darian Thompson was invited to speak at our BSU club meeting. During her time, she discussed 2 programs, the Dr. Cornell Bell Business Opportunity Program and the Bright Future Scholars Program. Those are for juniors interested in pursuing business at Purdue, and it is a free 1-week offering. These are programs designed specifically to increase Black and Latinx representation in the School of Management. Brittany Paramore, Equity, Belonging, and Inclusive Officer at the College of Education, and I have started collaborating on creating a summer camp for students, sophomores and up, who have expressed interest in education and mentoring opportunities between students within Purdue's College of Education and our students at Westside. We continue developing and strengthening our relationships with the College of Engineering and Purdue's Minority Mechanical Engineering Department. And I was invited to be a part of the selection committee for the Wall of Pride to provide an equity lens for their selection process. Finally, we offer the following website for our staff where people can access various resources. One of the reoccurring needs that came out of the PD was to learn about other cultures. So I created this page and included as a short description of various cultural, ethnic, and religious celebrations each month, followed by simple activities to get people started. We also have input from our students who are part of the CCDD club. And this week on March 8th, we are celebrating the celebration of Holi. One of our students also talked about Purim, so I made sure that that was added as well. So if anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about Holi, they can come to our club actually after spring break, because this Wednesday, the Black Student Union is meeting, and we are going to be looking at the cultural food that makes up the Black community, and we'll be tasting fried okra, catfish, and rice. We also develop activities and presentations in both clubs, and the plan is that when students are comfortable, they can offer the presentations to teachers throughout the corporation to share with the students. I'll go back to this part. Oh, and here I'll give you, these are just for our staff, of course. These are different things about your story, preparing yourself for any discussions, classroom community, basic strategies on if something is happening, someone is being microaggressed against, what we can do. We also have discussions about implicit bias, microaggressions, and then of course our resources from our PD at the on February 10th. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Finally, I'd like to end with this little note. Oftentimes it is believed that it's up to the DEI team or the one person to change the entire culture of an organization. But that is neither realistic nor is it sustainable. What I appreciate about Westside is the number of people who, while uncomfortable and often frustrated with the topics and the material, continue to show up and try because they are committed to their students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Falk, and I hope that you are not too late. Okay. She's come at her own expense tonight. She's got a class that's began at 7 o'clock that she's tardy to. Okay. We are going to move.
For all the work she has been doing, and actually I I read the website. I was very, very impressed by all the materials you put together. And I also actually interested in the clubs, and I wonder how it works, like open to the whole community or just the students? You said you have the clubs? Yeah.
Usually what the students, they feel safer among themselves and among the club sponsors who are part of that. I can always, I mean, you can always come in and we can prepare them to have adults come in too, because they're in a safe spot, they can talk at the time. And when other people come in, they kind of get a little more nervous, but they're willing to share. So if you want to come, we're going to be listening to High on the Hog. It's a Netflix series, and there are 4 episodes already. A few of us met at the Black Cultural Center in February, and we viewed the episode 3, we had tastings, and then we had discussion. So that's going to take place on Wednesday if you'd like to come.
Okay, sounds great. So it's for the high school, junior and senior high school.
Yes, we're inviting our 7th and 8th graders now that they've kind of learned about the behaving in the classroom. So they're not all swollen. So
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Yeah, we have the diverse community and people have a lot to bring in.
yes.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
hopefully that will, I mean, it just started, so hopefully we'll be able to get a lot more people involved and people feel like they can share a lot of different parts of them and their stories in that club. And that's the whole purpose.
Great, thank you so much.
Mrs. Volk, thank you for coming and reporting out tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Share something, Mrs. Fulton.
Absolutely, please,
So
Mrs. Ross.
as she's darting out the door, so she's not tardy to her class, I would like to share with everyone to save the date of April 4th. Dr. Aziz, who worked last year with staff and who has worked this year with the equity teams at each school, will be presenting for the community on that date, and that will be at 6:30 in the evening, and information will be going out about that this week sometime. So April 4th, 6:30 at the junior senior high school. Dr. Renee Aziz of Virtuoso Educational Consulting will come and share what she shared with staff and also share resources for anyone in the community who would like to join in.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, summer school recommendation. Mrs. Raw.
That is me. So in the board packet, you were given a recommendation for summer school. To be specific, this is a recommendation for summer schools for social studies. The last time we met, there was a recommendation for Indiana Online Academy. And to clarify, we do pay Indiana Online Academy. They bill us, but then we seek reimbursement through the state, and we also use ESSER learning loss funds. So that's how we offset that to make that neutral, cost neutral for the education fund. The recommendation you have before you today is for summer school for social studies that is taught by our junior senior high social studies department teachers. And they have come up with that to look at learning loss, but also to create consistency between the courses they offer during the regular school year, so that it's not a course from elsewhere with things that may or may not be consistent with what is offered in the department. So you have that recommendation, and that is, again, through reimbursement through the state and through ESSER learning loss funds is how that's offset. So it is cost neutral to the education fund. I would recommend that you approve that, and will of course accept any questions.
Okay, we'll start with a motion, please. So moved by Mrs. Austin,
Second.
second by Mr. Marley. Questions or comments for Mrs. Raw? Mrs. Mumford?
Has there been, so my understanding is this is the second year we've done this program.
I think it'll be the third year
It'll
of
be
the
sorry,
pilot.
the third.
Yes, ma'am.
Have we been collecting feedback about it the past 2 years? What's the future status of this program?
We've requested that since this is a pilot, this be the
Okay.
last year, and that feedback be collected so that we could decide if we move forward with the pilot, or if the pilot disintegrates, or if it morphs into something else that would be useful for students.
And then my understanding is both of this approval as well as the Indiana Academy Online, both are happening after students have actually already registered and some decisions have been made. Can we next year move this up earlier in the year to discuss it so that it's a discussion before decisions have been made?
I think that would be a simple matter of communication with the high school on timelines, and I don't think that would be difficult at all.
Wonderful. And then another question on your Indiana Academy Online that we cover the cost. Are students only taking this during the summer, or are they also taking it during the school year? Do they take classes from them during the school year?
I believe there are some courses that might be offered during the school year, yes.
Okay. And then I think my last one with the summer school is some parents, and I have shared this with you and the board, have felt that the summer school courses are becoming more and more restrictive, less and less options for our students. What can parents and students do to address this concern that's limiting their options? Some of them have reached out to department chairs and other ones and are wondering what are some good resources.
I think it's always a good idea to talk to the counselor, the particular counselor. The counselor will know the student's 4-year plan, which actually morphs into a 5-year plan because they started in 8th grade. And the counselor will be the one that can understand what the particular scheduling difficulty is. Counselors work with the administration and with department chairs on the schedules, and they can suggest possible ways to get around things that might create stress. And ultimately, they want to work with students to get them forward on their goals and their 4-year plans.
Thank you.
I would add is the guidance office now also able to kind of address the stress? And one of the things we know about our students is they also benefit from not being in school year round. So
Yeah.
do they kind of address that mental health component as well?
Certainly. And so for those of you who are not of the age where you would have junior, senior high school students, your student would be assigned a counselor, and that would be for academic pursuits, but your student is welcome to speak with any of the counselors for concerns that would be related to mental health, stress, or anyone with which they would be comfortable.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mrs. Roth on this before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of approving the recommendation for the summer school offerings from the Social Studies Department, please raise your hand and indicate. That motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Julian. Moving on to item 6, school board policy revisions.
Technology.
Oh, I keep trying to skip you, Mrs. Cronk. I don't
only had
know.
one tonight,
I'm
but-
sorry. Moving on to item 5, technology purchase approval, Mrs. Cronk. Thank you.
The current Chromebooks at West Lafayette Intermediate School that are used as supplementary resources in the educational process are nearing their end of useful life. The technology department recently secured 3 different quotes for the replacement of those 400 Chromebooks from CDW Government, Red 8 LLC, and Trapera. The lowest quote was received by Red 8 LLC in the amount of $98,764. The purchase will be paid for partially through technology grant funds and the education fund. The current Chromebooks will be used as spares during the 23-24 school year at the junior senior high school during testing, as well as in the intermediate school. Please approve this purchase as submitted.
Okay, let's start with the motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Schott,
Second.
second by Mr. Marley. Questions, comments for Mrs. Cronk? Very well-organized explanation of the bids that came through. Thank you. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the technology purchase approval recommended by Mrs. Cronk, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries. Mrs. Julian, 7-0. All right, now we'll move on to item 6, school board policy revisions. First reading of 2, and Dr. Greiner.
As you suggested, this is the first reading of 2 due to the fact that there's some substantial changes to these 2 policies. We're looking at policy 0143, board member authority, and policy 0143.1, public expression of board members. The point of these is to address the board's interest in releasing parts of the packet before the meeting. So I'd like to also point out that the changes you see highlighted have been shared with our attorney and endorsed accordingly. We've deleted statements that prohibit the release of information before the meeting, and then we've added language that will allow the superintendent on behalf of the board to release information, and the specific verbiage states deliberative materials not otherwise prohibited from disclosure by state or federal law provided to the members of the board may be released by the superintendent to the community via corporation website in advance of the meeting.
And so we'll start with a motion on this one.
This is
I'm
just
sorry, it's information
only.
only. Sorry, I'm really off my game tonight. Okay, just to clarify also the notation. So Mrs. Austin and I and Dr. Greiner met and went through these two policies. And to my fellow members on the board, we also kind of threaded out and looked at other possibly affected. So the policy isn't just dealing with the one, it's dealing with any that could be interconnected or referenced. The gray shading indicates what we are recommending be deleted. The yellow is what we have recommended be added. And the red line was put in by the attorney on legal review. So these will be posted in the board packet in exactly this way so that everyone understands exactly what changes we're making to these policies. Any questions or comments on any of these before we move on? Mrs. Mumford.
Do we have these for the overhead to share?
We do not, because this is a first reading, information only. They'll be up and available for anyone to review. So
Okay.
that was in my board chair notes this weekend. That might have been helpful. That information.
I had it.
Yeah. Okay.
The comment wasn't in it about this.
Yes. Well, neither here nor there. Now you have the answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my first question is on the third paragraph. It states that no member of the board shall be denied access to the documents unless the majority of the board has voted in a public meeting to censor the member. My question is, from my understanding is that actually we can't censor a member from having access to information.
So there's a different policy related to censure. This is standardized text, but there is, and I'm sorry, I don't know the policy number specifically regarding to censure. It's part of the board bylaws. You want to look it up, Mrs. Austin? I can tell you're already looking. So there is a specific policy related to what censure can be in our policy and what it equates to. And as I recall in that policy, limiting of documents is one of the items listed specifically. But if you'll give us the policy number, Mrs.
I looked under the zeros first, but it wasn't there.
We can come back to that part.
This would have been an ideal question to ask, for example, in those weekly chair notes so that we could have researched this information in advance of the meeting.
So I would like to have this a public discussion, not on the chair notes.
Did you find that?
It's 0167 is conduct. And then .8 is code of conduct. And 0143 is board member authority, and all of those relate to censure. I think that's the one we're talking about. Isn't it?
Yes, 143 is the one we're talking
The
about.
other two are the related
Yeah.
to censure.
Sorry, say the numbers again.
Yep. It was 0167 and 0167.8.
Thank you for looking that up.
So the question is sorry, I'm going to pull that one up. 067.
Okay, so it's 0167.8 item, after the board has an opportunity to consider a school board member's response. So this is the censure process. If the board has determined the member has committed the policy violation, it may take any or all of the following courses of action. A, censure the school board member's inappropriate conduct. B, limit the board member's access to confidential material and attendance at executive sessions. C, limit the board member's access to the school's facilities to times and places approved by the superintendent. D, restrict the school board member's access to deliberative materials, which is what would apply here, I believe. And E, recommend that the board member resign.
Mrs. Wick, could you explain when censure would become something the board would consider? Like what circumstances would lead to?
It's clearly outlined, really within board policy. It's quite rare. I think that any school corporation or board would pursue this against a member because it's very divisive in the community and not helpful. I will give a nod to Mrs. Mills at this moment and talk about the importance of words. And so pursuing censure would not be at the top of anyone's list, least of all mine, of something to do, barring something egregious. Sometimes you'll hear it happening associated with illegal or illicit activity by a board member, to remove someone, or not remove them, but limit their potential damage to a school or an entity. There are situations where, and there's a whole process outlined in 167.8, where perhaps a member would be notified of inappropriate behavior. So where they've perhaps been in violation of confidentiality from executive session, or there have been other complaints from the community or staff members, where there's a process wherein the leadership of the board would communicate with that member verbally, perhaps meet with them. That would be in writing. All of this is kind of outlined, and that process does happen. So, have I answered your question? Okay. Anybody else, any other questions about these policies, comments? Mr. Shaw.
What would the time frame be on when it'd be released to the public? Like the moment we get it, a day after? Kind of sometimes we get it in piecemeal. Would that be piecemeal, or?
I think that would be, and this is really written to be at the discretion of the superintendent. The point is that deliberative materials would be shared really from the school corporation. They're the school corporation's deliberative materials. So those would be posted when they were available, as determined, by the superintendent. Is that what you also believe, Dr. Reiner?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yes, this month, for example, I think because we had a short turnaround because of the week earlier meeting, we know our packet came in a little bit more, one document at a time. It's not necessarily all the documents get put like a present out for us. Mrs. Julian and everyone in central office work hard to give us information as soon as it's available, rather than making us wait until the last one is ready. So that's helpful to our review time as well. Any other questions, Mrs. Mumford?
Yes, so then in the end of paragraph A, in our policy bylaw, it says when the school corporation attorney advises the board, they shall view specific personnel records. So this is the only, actually both these, we're the only school district that I have seen, as I've reviewed several school districts, that has that part, and it doesn't seem like we have to have an attorney tell us if we can see the material or not.
Where are you?
So the end of A, where it starts when the school corporation attorney advises the board?
In 143, section 1, item A, yeah. I have found in my experience on the board that personnel matters are difficult and require very sensitive handling. And 100% of the time, the attorney is already involved in them, and at that time that happens. And so my sense is that we would want to abide by our attorney's advice. They are experts in this, and it is their role to help us, for lack of a more technical phrase, keep it legal and do the right things for our employees. So I don't have a problem with that, but I'm happy to take any feedback from anyone else that would like to see that change. Any other thoughts or comments on the end of item A as it relates to the corporation attorney? Okay.
I still have another question, sorry.
Okay.
At the very end of 143.1, the very last one that's left on number 9 currently in our current one, says individual board members shall not disseminate information about the proceedings of the executive session meetings. This is actually in our bylaw 167.2. This section is talking about when school board members can actually share statements and not explicitly sanctioned. So it doesn't seem to match up with this section. It doesn't have anything to do with the other 5 topics.
I will just tell you historically, I believe that's in there as a caution, and I agree with you that it might not be necessary to include that in. However, We have had board members with difficulty with this in the past, and so I would be inclined to leave that information in that policy for that reason.
Now, why doesn't bylaw 0167.2 cover that? Where it talks about executives.
This item is redundant to that. I would agree with you. I just think
This is the one where actually the attorney told you to put it back.
put it back in, yeah. We initially actually had grayed that out, and the attorney recommended.
Okay, and then my last question on these ones is just understanding why we're removing the maintained by Neola. I don't know exactly how it works with them. Do they not maintain these, or they do? I don't know how
They do
it.
not directly maintain our policies. They provide
Okay.
recommended updates, and we can choose to accept them. And that was just a wording choice that we
Okay.
looked at and said, well, they're not really maintaining, let's delete it. That was just a language. At some point, I think we'll also have a conversation, and this is going to come up later as in information of the board, but I think at some point we're gonna have a conversation about Neola and if they're our best choice, but that's a conversation for the full board.
And then I have another question in regards to the policies, not to these exactly, the policy committee. So in regards to this meeting about these policies. So my question is understanding how the policy committee doesn't have to follow the open door law and not allow the community to attend its meetings. So I had reached out to the public access counselor, and it is in our bylaw 0155 that says any official action that could be information deliberating, making recommendations, that it has to be open door with minutes.
We're not taking official action during the policy committee. We're just revising, like, it's very informal. It's what do you think of this? How is this going to be applied? And then we bring it here for the official action.
There's nothing obscured is what Mrs. Austin, I would ask you this question in response. How is this different from the meeting that you have with anyone in the corporation office with regarding, the topics that you have met upon? They're really work session, and they're an opportunity to prepare the highest quality information available for the rest of the board to see. If we were deleting sections of these and not showing them to the board, or we were not being completely transparent in the nature of the edits and the question of the edits, I could see how that could be constituted as decision-making, but it's simply not decision-making.
Okay, so our bylaw and the Indiana Code says official action includes receiving information, deliberating, or making recommendations. It's not just a voting. So that's where the question
We're
is.
not making a recommendation in the policy committee.
Right.
We brought the recommendation here tonight to the public meeting.
Can I also ask you a question, Mrs. Mumford? Does this mean that you've gone to the public access counselor to complain about the operation of a board that you are currently a member of?
And trying to understand about a policy, and when I asked last month, and you stated that it's not allowed to be a public meeting, and trying to understand our bylaws. So yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the policy that we've looked at tonight? This is, again, the first reading. It'll be available to the community to review and our board packet informations. It'll be up after the meeting.
Question regarding the policy committee. So how many people right now in the policy committees?
The board members assigned to the policy committee are
Okay.
Mrs. Austin and myself.
Okay.
And then we meet also with Dr. Reiner because obviously he's the educational leader of our.
So you three people right now compose the committees, the policy committees.
That's it. We sit down and prepare materials for the board to review.
Okay.
We're doing the homework.
Okay.
Mr. Wong.
So who is the chair of the?
There is no
committee?
chair.
No chair. Just people work together. Okay.
It's no different than if you sit down and meet with Mrs. Kronk, why isn't that an open door meeting? Or if Mrs. Mumford and Mr. Marley and Dr. Greiner meet with members of the West Lafayette community about some of the work they've been doing, why isn't that open door? Because realistically, we do still have to do some work and prepare materials and information for the rest of the board. That's part of it. I don't know how to say this any more clearly. I'm just going to be direct and say we're just not all that important, Mr. Wong.
No.
As individual members, we really are not all that important.
No.
We're only important when we get together, and even then,
Yeah, I understand that. I'm not critical or just, I'm just questioning
Yeah.
how that works. And in my opinion, we are not just barely meet the open door policies. We have policy committees, we collect feedbacks. I think we should include more people in the committee, say community members. We have a lot of talented peoples. And so this is not really, we just barely meet the open door legal requirement. I mean, we want community peoples, we want the parents involved, and we can even invite students because our students, even the high school, they are very quickly they will be a citizen. I mean, old enough to be citizen. So when we can get involved people at the very beginning when we make policies, we can make better policies because we are not just sitting in this room, just think about something and make policies and everybody impact. So we get more people involved and I think we can make better policies. I still believe.
I would suggest, Mr. Wong, that if anyone has any recommendations
Okay.
that they would like to change any policies, whether it's yourself
Okay.
or someone who's in the audience or someone who's watching the live stream,
Okay.
that they send an email
Okay.
to Dr. Greiner and say, I would like to make this policy recommendation for this reason. And then the next time the policy committee meets, we'll take that into consideration. And if
Okay.
it's worthy, we'll bring it before the whole board.
I'm not sure that's
got you.
necessary, given the fact that you guys are having this dialogue here and the public is available to talk. So, for example, the policies here, there's going to be a second reading. So I'm not sure.
Not about these in particular, just any old policy. If somebody wants us to stand on our heads during the meeting, we could think about it, but I don't know if that'd be a good idea.
I think we all need to also be mindful of the fact that Dr. Reiner has a day job, which is to manage the schools and to do so as efficiently as possible. Not that he does not care about us. I'm sure that you care very much about us, Dr. Greiner, but we do need to allow him to run the schools. And again, I cannot say this clearly enough. There's really nothing hidden here in the process. Everything, including who said what, is really on the
Yeah, I'm
policy.
not, I'm not saying not trust, I'm just saying we get more people involved. I still believe with collective intelligence, and also this is a very good opportunity so we can build up the trust with community members once we get them involved. But as you said, if there are too much troubles, not necessary, that's fine. I'm a new person. If you guys think that's the best way, I have no problem. But I'm just have some thinkings about that. Okay, thank you.
I've been on policy before. The public would not be interested in it. It's not.
Okay,
It's not a
not
brainstorming
really
session.
big
It's
people
not
show
relevant.
up. Okay, then that's fine, that's fine. I just think about something.
We're really talking about commas an awful lot, Mr. Wong. Dr. Yin, did you also wish to say something?
Yes, thank you. I just want to express my gratitude to many people actually who contributed to where we are now. And just so for many years, since I started to pay attention to the school board and the district administration issues, and people are asking for transparency for years. And many people have contributed to this, including many school board candidates, and such as Deja Medford and Angie James, and many others. And also those alumni, for example, Ela, Daniel, for privacy, no last name, but and many parents, community members, and I really appreciate everybody's contribution to this issue. And I also appreciate the current administration and who take this very seriously. And you did research and talk to the lawyers and figure out a way to remove the barrier for transparency. I really, really appreciate this and appreciate all the people who have contributed to this. And finally, just to think before, well, we don't even release the packet. Then, and with Deisha's effort, and Daniel, I think, too, and we are able to release the packet after the meeting. Now we are moving to the direction that we can finally release the packet before the meeting so we can.
I'm sorry, Ma'am, we are well past the point of where the
meeting minutes and the agenda are leading us, and I think we should get back on track for the good of the order. Please.
I'm talking about this, this issue on the agenda. I don't know why it's irrelevant. And
You're not,
so I just
though.
have last word.
You're not, the issue on the agenda is policy 143 and 143.1. And I think for the good of our staff who got to work at 7:30 this morning, we can move it along, don't you?
Yeah,
Okay. So, this is information only. Thank you for your comments, Dr. Yin. It's true. This has been a process for the past 2 years. We've been working, all of us have been working towards increasing transparency of documents here in our school corporation. And as Dr. Greiner would probably attest, we discussed it with him at length through the interview process. So from day one, he has known this is something that we have been intending to do. So I am agree. There's some gratitude there as well, and happy to move on. I'm going to move on to the release of the redacted board chair notes. I consulted after our last meeting. I consulted with Dr. Greiner again, and I consulted with also a corporation attorney, and spoke with them about the board chair note process. My questions were really, A, is this process that I have asked the school board to undertake in terms of adding comments to weekly notes, is that legal? And is it an unreasonable request? Yes, it is legal. No, it is not an unreasonable request. So for that reason, I removed it as a voting item. Going forward, I will, as Mr. Wong pointed out in our last meeting, it is within my reasonable direction as the board chair to release the notes of our work as the board. I intend to do that on a weekly basis. I will go back and redact the notes that have happened since our last meeting. I will also redact comments as I will redact comments that are put on by other board members. I did also go through and ask the board, and Dr. Greiner assisted me with this, we asked the legal counsel to also review my redaction quality, if that makes sense. So I'm not a professional at this, so we asked for that to be reviewed. And with one exception related to legal advice. So when I quote legal advice, I will be redacting that going forward. I outlined that in my board chair notes from this week. So you as board members are not required to read the board chair notes. That is up to you to decide to read them. It is up to you to decide to comment upon them. But going forward, for the benefit of the transparency to our community, I will receive questions and answer them there. And that is how I will do it. If you email me, I'm not going to answer the questions. We need to move our communications as a board out of emails that require public records requests to be viewed and into a document that we are voluntarily releasing to the community. Any questions or comments on that before we move along?
Thank you. May I ask, so in the future, if we ask you a question about something, that question will be on that note, right?
That's
the question
correct.
and the question and answer will be on
Comment,
that.
yes. So for example, in the notes from this weekend, Mrs. Austin asked a question related to my note. I responded to her in that comment as well. Now, in the case of that one, I probably would have to redact a great amount of it because of the nature of the question that she asked. I haven't read it for 2 days, so I could be mistaken.
So the question has to be about your notes. If people have a question, for example, hireability issues, and so that's not on your notes, can people still ask you a question or ask that question on your notes? I just, people are not, board members are not allowed to email questions anymore.
The board notes are an informal document. It's just my communicating with you what I have done or thought. Right? And so at the start of it, it says, if you have any other questions or you have any other information that would be helpful to the board, you could feel free to add it. So you can feel free to add it.
So even if it's irrelevant to what you wrote on the notes?
this is not a formal agenda or document. So,
Right, I understand.
yeah.
Just to
Yeah.
clarify that. So any questions we have can be right on that notes
If
and
you
you
would-
will address
yep,
it.
if you would
then
like
that
to.
will be released.
As long as it isn't something that has to be redacted. So if it requires the legal counsel, or if it is purely deliberative, if it is a matter of assessment, so if you are assessing, and this is an example, we had a comment added that was a report from a member that contained a personal assessment of the performance of the board or the school corporation. I have to redact that because
Yeah, I
that person
understand.
is not necessarily qualified or authorized to assess something's performance. So that information I would need to redact because it's not.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's not, does that explain a little bit more? I do still have to go through and redact things that are not
Yeah, I understand.
appropriate to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks.
We need to do away with the 500 thread emails. That's not a good, transparent way for us to conduct a business of the school corporation of the board. That's just it.
Oh, by the way, sorry, last question. So I think one of the speakers talk about, and on the notes, will you, besides everybody knows that's your note, and then for those who ask those questions, so will we also answer those questions and the comments?
So in the past, I've redacted all proper nouns and pronouns. So I've written them to be gender neutral and removed names from them. And I've done that intentionally so that I wasn't misquoting. You wouldn't ever read something that I had written that you said, right? I didn't want you to have to correct it if I got it wrong. Now, if it is your comment and you write your comment with your name on it, then that's your writing that I have not edited and I don't have a need to redact that. But if it's something I'm going to say about someone so for example, if I receive community feedback, Mrs. Austin let me know that she had heard from a parent about XY concern, I will redact Mrs. Austin's name from that in case I somehow misrepresent what Mrs. Austin said to me. But if you are speaking, then I can list that down there. Again, understand there may be times I have to redact the content of the question based on what it is. I want to make clear and say this, these minutes are not written for the purpose of talking to the community. They're not written for the community to read. They are written for the school board members to function with all the same information. That's why I write them. I'm not writing a commentary or a newsletter or whatever. It's writing so that we people around this table are able to work better together as a group. So that's why you have a choice to read it or not read it, contribute to it or not contribute. We're all individual adult human beings and we can make those choices in life. But I'm not writing it for the purpose of our community necessarily knowing. I'm just being transparent about the work that we are doing. So things that are deliberative, and most of the document is deliberative content, I may have to redact depending on what it is. Does that explain? Does that?
Yeah, kind of, but I see how it works, then I will know better because right now it sounds like, there are a lot of authors for that notes right now. And
I would just recommend that you read them and apply some.
I did.
Right, apply some comments to them and give it a try. See how it works. See how it works. It's a mechanism. And if it doesn't work, okay, we'll consider changing it, but they've worked well for the past year. So I'd like us to keep riding that particular train.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I just right now the changes, besides you, other people will be the author of that too. So I'm just trying to figure out how that will work. But anyway, I'll see.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Mumford.
So I've appreciated that you started sharing these notes last year. I think the community, like you said, these notes are for the board, but I think the community has appreciated you sharing them. I agree that we shouldn't be having conversations on email, and I actually don't think that we should be having conversations over Box either. So I support the idea of you sharing these, but don't feel like that we should be having alternate meetings over box. And so my understanding is that as a board member, we can ask questions via email or whatever. We should not be having discussions worth that. We can do it at the meeting. I mean, this is the ideal time to have a discussion, not alternative meetings.
So Mrs. Mumford, have you read my notes?
I have.
Okay. So they are really intended to convey information to everyone.
Right.
They are not at all really discussion. And I wouldn't encourage anyone making a comment to create discussion on them. They're really intended for you to share a viewpoint if you have a viewpoint, but they're not intended to be a method for making decisions via electronic means. They're not a bypass. They're making sure everyone on the board has the same information.
And I appreciate that. So I appreciate you sharing it with us. I just don't agree with the view that we should be making comments and asking questions and a back and forth conversation on there. My other question is if you would share the legal advice of why you're not, if you would share why you're not sharing any legal advice with the community as you share your board chair notes.
The board is protected by attorney-client, and our attorney has suggested that you should not give that right up as a board.
That you can't share legal advice that you've received to the community.
Right, that is her advice, that because of attorney-client privilege, the board should not give that up, and so that is what.
Right, so in my notes from this week.
Right, I understood and had said, like, she had talked about, when you talked about the policies, that was fine to share with the board, but at other times, there's other things you may choose not to.
No, so what she did is went and reviewed previous notes to see, and only one other time had I indicated, said the legal counsel said XYZ. And it wasn't anything particularly exciting, it was policy. It was a policy-related comment that I was sharing with the board. I did go back to our attorney and say to them, what does it work if I share the information with the board? Because I do think the board needs to hear directly from legal and not legal interpreted by Rachel. And she said, yes, that's fine as long as you're redacting that when it goes out to public view. The logic specifically she gave that was in my notes, the only potential issue that jumps out is including legal advice in the chair notes. My concern is that my communications, and likely those from ISBA attorneys, are confidential thanks to the attorney-client privilege. Now, WLCSC holds that privilege, meaning that you get to decide when my communications are shared or not. Conversely, I cannot disclose any of our communications except with your permission. My concern is that when attorney-client communication is made publicly available, WLCSC can waive that attorney-client privilege as to that matter. Now, in the instance I saw in the 210 chair notes regarding the number of readings per policy, that's not much of a concern. However, if there were something that were adversarial or that could become adversarial, I'd be hesitant to share attorney advice. So essentially, once you open the door is open on what any particular item is. And so we would try and avoid doing that if it could put us in a vulnerable situation or school in a vulnerable situation later. Any further questions? Did that meet your request, Mrs. Mumford?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wong.
Yes, I'm wondering the purpose of this meeting, this chair's notes is just for internal information sharing. And then maybe why we don't have another document or whatever other matters for the transparency purpose. So basically these notes already serve function, whatever internal share information, and we can have something else for the transparency. That may be better.
It's this meeting.
Huh?
It's this meeting.
Well,
Our public meetings are when the community can see what we're discussing and doing as a board.
yeah, my point is that notes already serve the purpose, and it's not really served for the publication. So we may think about whether or not we should publish that. You see what I mean? Again, I appreciate you put a lot of time and effort on that and increase the transparency. I have no problem with that. I'm just wondering, maybe there are some better ways to share the information with communities, and also increase the transparencies.
So it's the meeting is the public opportunity to be transparent with the information that, I mean, I cannot release the chair notes and wait for somebody to file an APRA request every month to see the chair notes.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
I would just assume release them. Having been through that,
Okay.
Mr. Marley, do you have any thoughts on this? You've been around longer than I have.
Years.
Yeah.
School corporation was actually founded in 1908, and it's been perfectly fine for quite a long time. I will say that we have offered more transparency than ever before, and I think it's the right thing to do. Addressing Dr. Yin's comments, I've been a proponent of transparency for quite a few years, actually, but we work together as a group, okay? That's the only action that we can accomplish is together. So what Mrs. Witt's trying to do is share additional information that she's not required to share, but she's preparing notes that are germane to the subject and material that we might be talking about in this public board meeting, so that we're aware of maybe some of the measures that have been taken collectively before this meeting. I think it's a good idea. I think it's nice that she's doing that. It's not way above and beyond the call of duty. But I think this is a good suggestion. Let's roll with it. This is the third board meeting we've had this year. Let's roll with it and let's see how we can work together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's just that's my point. That say this meeting is very important, and then the meeting minutes. That's pretty much the official document we board collectively communicate with admins, teachers, communities, and I think maybe we can pay more attention, put more effort on the meeting minutes. I mean, if you look at the meeting minutes download count, say in 2018, there's over 2,000, and 2019, 20 something like 1,000, and then 21, several hundred. Now it's something like 100, 200. So I think maybe we should pay more attention to the meeting minutes, have more key information on that, and then more people will see that that's official document. I mean, my understanding is our board communicate with the community, with everybody, with that meeting minutes. And I think that's maybe more important than, but again, I think you really spend a lot of time working on the transparency. I really appreciate that, and I think that's good work. But I just thinking, and also this year's board, this year's goal, one of the goals is to improve the communications. Maybe we can have a bigger pictures and see how chair notes and the meeting minutes and other communications ways. Maybe we can consolidate together or think about something. That's just some of my thought. I mean, that's because we want to improve the transparency. And when you talk about transparency, it's not free. I mean, no matter you have our attorney to redactions or you do that, this costs money, costs the time. You, as president, I know you spend a lot of time, you have a full-time job, and I appreciate that. So transparency have a cost. And also when we put something on our homepage, and my understanding right now is you do the redaction. If we don't have the legal attorney to redact those informations, there will be some possible liabilities to the school. So when we take those things, the con, the pro, the cost, the benefit, right now the notes have something like 100, 200, 300 downloads. So when we compare the cost and the benefit, maybe we'll think about what's the best way to do it. That's just my opinion. So I'm not, again, I really appreciate your help, you volunteer your time and effort for so long time to working on that, increase the transparency.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, not to interrupt you, but I don't think we're going to have public records requests with the frequency with which we used to have them because of the transparency that we're now offering.
Okay.
So I appreciate what you're preparing for, but I don't know that we're going to have the volume we've had in the past.
I mean, after we have released these notes, we have pretty much down the public record.
I think we're pretty much covering everything.
Okay, and that's just some of my idea, because we we are teams who work together. So I just share some of my thoughts. We see what's the best way. We just see make that better and find the best way to work on. That's all. Sorry about that. That's too much time. Go ahead. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Any other comments on this topic? Okay, let's move on to item 7, the personnel report. Dr. Greiner.
I want to point out on the personnel report that we have received the resignation from Connie Laws, and Mrs. Laws is going to be moving into retirement with her husband. And so she's submitted her retirement effective June 30th. We appreciate that Connie was serving the district from 2004 to 2010. And then she came back again in 2017 and has been working with us since the present. She'll be missed. I've been warned that this woman right here could cry. So we truly appreciate the expertise and the knowledge and the history that Connie brings to our district. She's well respected by all. I can tell you we love her. And at this time, with that recognition and appreciation to Connie, I would just say that I recommend the board accept the personnel report as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Marley.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Alston. Any questions or comments? Mr. Wong.
Yeah, can I have a question regarding this month's the personnel report? And there's some, I see there's some resign letters, and there are some of their personal informations, medical informations. Do you think we should include those information in our?
That is not included in the public report. That information is redacted.
Okay. But I see that in the PDF file, so it shouldn't. That will be removed before.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's okay. I'm just
Yes.
double check. Okay, wait, that's okay. That's all I need to clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, sure. Yeah, I wonder by any chance we can start a tradition to celebrate some anniversaries. For example, 5-year anniversary, 10-year anniversary, 15-year anniversary for teachers, staff members to appreciate their contribution to the district. Because for example, this year Mrs. Brooks and Mr. Castor and now Connie, who have worked here for a long time, and we will have a retirement party as far as I know. But besides this, I wonder whether we can do a routine celebration, maybe as simple as invite them to the board meeting and ask students or colleagues to talk about their contributions, things like that. I think it would be really, really nice.
Thank you for that suggestion, Dr. Yin. And we are actually talking about doing more. And we, as you've seen in Friday Notes, have started some recognition where staff are recommending staff. And that is our next phase to kind of explore exactly what you're talking about. So we started small under the direction, support of Anna, or suggestions of Mrs. Roth, and actually Callie Slaughter have done a nice job of working on that, and expanding that as per what you've just suggested is something that we absolutely would like to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's very, besides the classroom teachers, we also have a lot of the heroes behind the scene, right? Like, staff members. And many times people don't know they are working behind the scene. For example, the school bus running every day smoothly, but people don't know actually somebody is working on for that. And somebody has to get up early in the morning to check the weather, things like that. If we don't say, people won't realize it. And I just really hope we have opportunity to tell those stories. And thanks. Really appreciate your, I already noticed that you have a lot of celebrations on our school Facebook and Twitter, and that's awesome. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wong.
So those, the personal report, the resign letters, do you think we board members should see that, or you just keep that confidential? I mean, that's just follow-up questions.
We keep that confidential from the public. You as a board see that as you see that you see.
I'm kind of a little bit uncomfortable because I don't want, I don't want to see their medical information and their personal reasons. I think maybe you can just keep that as confidential. Or...
So that's why we sign those NDAs first thing before you got any
Oh,
packets.
okay.
Yeah,
Then
we're
that's fine.
obliged to keep confidential things confidential at all times.
I just don't want to backstand and then there's some information leaked or. Okay, that's okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving the personnel report, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Julian. So we're going to move on to item 8, the accounts payable finance update, and Mrs. Cronk.
Claims for the period of February 8th to February 28th total $2,574,930.61, including regular corporation expenses and the Wabash Valley Education Center expenses. Of this amount, $1,587,713.26 were paid towards wages, salaries, and benefits. I do want to clarify that the February 28 claims are the ones that were held for this meeting for approval. We have to cut it off at a certain point because we have a lot of payroll stuff that falls in between typically. Moving on to our preliminary fund report for the month ending February 28th, the education fund is a balance of $3,087,924.38. And total funds on hand for the corporation are $18,689,414.33. Please note that the report is preliminary as we've not yet closed the month. ACA forms were distributed to employees before the end of February as required by law. These forms are purely informational only and are not required for tax preparation. A lot of people get confused about those forms. I'd also like to put a plug in for the business office. Mrs. Janelle Wade, our deputy treasurer, recently completed her assistant business manager certification through the Indiana Association of School Business Officials, so we're very proud of her. I'm also proud to say that all of our members of the business office take part in workshops and certification courses offered by IASPO. Dr. Greiner even recently took part in the accrual accounting certification course that I teach. And he was paying attention every time that I called on him to answer questions. And he actually did the exercises by himself because his group members were no-show. So I was very proud of him.
Got an A+.
Yeah. I haven't graded what he did, but he did. So. We also recently held a retirement information meeting for teachers wanting to retire this year or in the near future. We had about 20 attendees representing all years of services and ages, and some are actually here this evening. So we are planning to offer this meeting annually, sharing general information with regards to retirement and master teacher contract, Indiana Teacher Retirement Fund, and Social Security. It's never too early to start planning for retirement, and so that is open to anybody that wants to come to that regardless of their age. So. It's great seeing a number of our veteran teachers and actually getting to know them a little bit because sometimes I don't make it out that often. So, please approve the accounts payable finance update as submitted.
May I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wong, second by Mr. Schott. I just need to ask this question. Is your willingness to discuss retirement with our veteran teachers in any way indicative of a desire to get people to retire early?
No, Lord, no.
Thank you. It just needed to be said clearly.
Being a personal
Mrs. Craig.
finance teacher at one point, an economics teacher, I like to share information, and that information is very important. In the 10 years that I've been in this type of position, I've seen way too many people wait until the last minute and not have that information when they get to that point. And so it is purely indicative of me being the teacher that I am. Okay. You know that, correct? Right.
It was better than in person. I'm not kidding. It was the best. It was an awesome presentation.
Thank you, Sue.
I just wanted to make sure that was crystal clear. We are not trying to push any of our teachers to retire from West Lafayette schools. Just any other questions or comments about the payables or financial report from Mrs. Cronk?
Just a bearer of information.
Yes. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the accounts payable finance update, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0, Mrs. Julian. Okay, we are going to move on to information from the board, and I think, Dr. Greiner, you should go first tonight. What do you think?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
Okay, so we, we're in legislative session right now. And so I just wanted to point out to keep an eye on, we're certainly keeping an eye on, talking closely with our professional organizations and or legislators. House Bill 1499 relates to Operations Fund, Property Taxes, and Referendum Fund. We're concerned right now about the current proposed 3% cap on new referendum revenue. Also, it decreases property tax cap for residential taxpayers from 1% to 0.95% with a gradual increase over time. It will severely limit our operations revenue and likely increase circuit breaker loss. So while we expect changes going from House to Senate, we certainly want to keep an eye on this, and we're communicating with our professional organizations so that we can get the word out to our legislators how this impacts our district and districts. We'll certainly keep an eye on that. House Bill 1001 is the budget bill, and this bill drastically increases vouchers funding while also increasing the number of people eligible for that. So when you look at those increases that our legislators are talking about, that percentage of increase, those dollars are coming out, they're a part of that increase. So if you ask yourself, is that the true increase to public education, I think you've got the answer to that question. On top of that, it rolls in a textbook, in its current form, textbook reimbursement into the state tuition. But it does not fully fund that. And so that means then dollars in our education fund are being used in new ways that could be used in ways that are supporting our classroom and our teachers. And then the bill also changes the way that the operations fund would be funded through property taxes. This too would decrease our revenue, proposing a per student levy, and our student or our district currently receives more money in its current sense than going to this new direction. And we can see that in the current model. So we want to stress again that both of these bills, 1001 and 1499, ultimately do decrease funding for West Lafayette Community School Corporation. And we hope to see changes in this bill as it moves through the Senate. You saw some comments on Senate Bill 12 that I made through Twitter. I've gotten some questions on that. Truly, our concern is there are mechanisms in place right now to question books and or to discuss whether or not a book is appropriate. There are ways for parents to appeal. So Senate Bill 12 talks about taking away protections for our teachers. There's already protections in place for the types of things that it's talking about, taking protections away from teachers. There's already ways to address if inappropriate material were purposely presented to children. And so my comments and Twitter were simply, and I still stand behind this, we believe in local decisions, local control. I do believe that our teachers should, if they're making good faith effort to present materials for educational reasons, they should be protected, period. And that's where I stand, and I hope that you as a board stand behind our great teachers.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Greiner. Mrs. Roth, did you also have, I feel like we skipped over the good news.
And you've probably seen these 17 national merit finalists that's about 10% of our junior, senior high school population. That is absolutely amazing. And I will say, I would credit that to all of the family, and this is just me, again, my own opinion, but I credit that to families, I credit that to teachers, I credit that to a community that supports education. And I'm going to give one more number, 115. That is the number of teacher proposals for PD for the STEM grant. So Mrs. Falk talked about choice and voice when we received these funds. That's exactly what we wanted to do. And we, Callie and I are working through them. We've not yet found someone to come join our team, but we are still working through them, and our goal is to get through them as quickly as possible. But 115 proposals, and that is more than 115 teachers, because some of the proposals are multiple groups of teachers, and we will still be doing more. So I want to thank each and every teacher who got creative, came up with the idea, said, I want to take this opportunity to do something that our hope was that it would be something that would be beneficial to you, and that it would give you the chance to collaborate and work together in ways that you see fit on goals that you would like to accomplish. So that is in the works. And we've got a few other things that will be coming out, hopefully, that will spark some excitement as well. So thank you. 115, that's pretty impressive.
Mrs. Cronk, did you also have good news for us tonight that we missed?
Well, I just wanted to share that our Willis students, intermediate students, had a lot of success here recently. Math counts, Battle of the Books victory, success in the Indiana Chess Regional, and then Sharanya Carr on her spelling bee success as she moves on to national level competition, which is awesome. So.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
We cannot forget our elementary, since we've been given permission to come back to our celebrations, because that's what's so important. Yeah, congratulations to our elementary students on a great week of Read Across America. And the overall favorite book was the Harry Potter series. So that's pretty exciting. And then Kindergarten Roundup is just around the corner. So we encourage all to save the date and to get signed up for kindergarten registration. And K Roundup open house is Tuesday, March 28th from 4:30 to 6:30.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
cycling back to good news. My notes to the board are less exciting. I did receive an inquiry about the language in our policies related to the roles and responsibility of the board member and the role of secretary of the board. I sent that to legal for review, and while there's not a conflict per se, there may be an opportunity to eliminate some superfluous language. That would constitute a single reading for a vote because there's not a change in the actual function. So I would expect that you will see that in the April board packet with regard to the proposed language there. A reminder to all on the board that we do plan to have board training and executive session on Thursday, April the 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the WEVEC Training Center with Dr. Judy Hendricks. I don't have an update on board teacher discussion. It was not held in February, so we had some great collaboration between WLEA and administration, and the next meeting of that group will be in March. And then finally, I received a question regarding policy PO 2462, and saying that, or questioning if it was in conflict with Indiana Code 20362-2. And the short answer is that the policy and the law do align. They are not in conflict. We as a board are charged with the responsibility of ensuring a myriad of Indiana code requirements are met. I would estimate thousands. Too many for the board itself to implement, and implementing those requirements would go beyond our policy making role. So that is a reason for board policy, I just lost the number, 2464, right? That is the reason that policy exists, because to meet those statutory requirements, the board delegates through that policy these duties to the superintendent and/or his designee. That is the relationship between that Indiana code and the policy. Our superintendent is an education professional. Congratulations. We hold Dr. Greiner accountable for the day-to-day operation of our schools. That is his right role. And for the management of personnel. We as a board do not do the tasks ourselves. We are not education professionals. So we fulfill the legal obligation through the delegation established in that policy. I hope that that clarifies with regard and specifically to the question of high ability. That is exactly what is happening, that we have delegated through that policy 2464 to our superintendent and his team as education professionals to manage high ability and to fulfill that Indiana code. And there are thousands more where that came from that we don't handle as a board. We are accountable for making sure that Dr. Greiner does fulfill that the goals of the school corporation are met. And we do that through his evaluation process, and goal setting for the school corporation is the year. So if we as board members receive feedback from our community concerned with high ability or any other academic function, any other day-to-day function of the schools, it is our role to correctly refer and escalate that matter to the appropriate people who are charged with the task. We cannot cherry pick the things we care about and try and micromanage our superintendent's work in those areas. That's not the right and appropriate role of a board or any member or a board as a whole. I hope that that clarifies. I'm happy to share with you the attorney's response and review of this same matter, but just to be perfectly clear, I did submit it, and that Indiana code and our policy are very much aligned and appropriate together. That is all that I have in my notes. Mrs. Austin, what do you have in your engagement report?
Everybody always talks about my stuff. As far as the legislative, I attended State House Day at ISBA, and my notes from that were included in your weekly notes. I've attended a couple third house luncheons and learned a lot about what's happening, although I'm beginning to feel like we'd all be better off if the assembly would just stop. There's a little good news, though. The bill to make school board elections partisan died again, but we'll probably see it again next year. And I have another update tomorrow and a lunch on Friday to talk about legislative updates. And that is everything that wasn't covered.
Thank you. Did you have anything else on your engagement?
My engagement on the legislative.
On anything else that you did this month? No, she says no. Okay, Mrs. Mumford, what reports do you have?
I actually have been attending the diversity roundtable each month, and they've covered a whole variety of topics. Actually, this last time they talked about speaking and lobbying with our local officials. A few months ago, the 3 superintendents were there. But the thing I wanted to share is they are sponsoring with the League of Women Voters this Thursday at 5:30, State Representative Earl P. Harris, who's the chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. They're going to speak about the introduction legislative in the current session to close the minority student achievement gap. So really exciting all that they're doing. It's a great group. And then my only questions that I had was in regards to the school board training that you brought up. My first question is, why does it have to be in an executive session? What's confidential about a school board training that would have to be done in an executive session?
I think it's clear enough to our community and to us as individual board members that we are perhaps not highly skilled in our interpersonal relationships right now. And this would be an opportunity to have candid conversations about that with the trained facilitator. So that is the purpose of requesting Dr. Hendricks do that. It is not uncommon for boards to receive training. And in particular, this one would be focused on appropriate board role and responsibility, board member role and responsibility, and also communication and interpersonal dynamics in the group. So we can be to hopefully a better place working together as a board.
So why would that need to be an executive session? Why couldn't that?
I think it would be, I would allow other members to comment upon this, but I would suggest to you that it'd be important that we could all speak candidly. And we might not be inclined to do that on the stage.
And then my second question is, I wasn't clear how this relates to the STEM grant and if there's a better appropriate funding source for this training.
It's $1,000 training, and in discussion about things that we could do as a board to better support our school corporation, particularly in light of the amount of time we spent just last month discussing whether or not we should hire a position, that certainly our ability to work productively as a board impacts the STEM grant. I don't know, Dr. Greiner, do you have an opinion about that?
Precisely what you said. It was actually Dr. Hendricks who suggested, because she's worked closely with Mrs. Roth, to put together that plan along with the teachers. And if we spend the $250,000 $100,000 for professional development, then that's $250,000 that we've maximized to be able to use for the materials. And so given the fact that you can build that bridge to show how each level is working to support our teachers in their work. That's why Dr. Hendricks had suggested, why don't you go that route? If the board prefers, if you guys prefer as a board that we take the funds from somewhere else, we can certainly visit that and do that. That was just her recommendation, given that money is there and the board is working to support administration and teachers in their efforts to focus on and learn together and grow together, and then have materials to further develop our STEM offerings or approach to meeting the needs of our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the training is important. And so I think it makes sense to take it from the professional development funds. That's not the hill I'll die on. So if you feel strongly otherwise, we can have more conversation about it. This is not, however, a voting matter. This is just information to the board right now. So it's not on our agenda for a vote tonight.
So question, let's follow up the question. So that fund is a federal fund or just a state? Federal fund?
From the state, which is the SEA, to us as the LEA. So we are, as an LEA, a recipient of their ESSER grant. So we received ESSER funds that then we do something with, and that came directly from the federal government administered through the state of Indiana. The state of Indiana also received ESSER funds that they then decided what they would do with them.
Okay.
And we received this award as a part of their decision on how to distribute those funds.
So if we use that money for the PDs, we didn't, that's the purpose of that fund?
Yes, $250,000 has to be used for professional development. And then if we use the $250,000 for professional development, we are able to access another $250,000 for supplies and resources and materials. And we have to do it all by September 30th.
So we didn't, that's the purpose of that fund, right? We
Yes,
just use that.
it is absolutely.
Okay. And then that's all.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else, Mrs. Mumford? Okay, Mr. Schott.
West Lafayette Schools Foundation, teacher grant applications are due this Friday, March 10th. As of last Friday, they had received 6 applications, which was a high for the grant cycle since before the pandemic. You know, I've mentioned multiple times Wall of Pride, April 13 and 14, but I don't believe I've ever mentioned the honorees of this year, so I'll do that now. There are 6 of them, 5 alumni: Sonia Angel, John Dennis, David Kelso, Gary Lehman, and Chris Ho, as well as Joe Kraus, a longtime social studies teacher, 1961 to 1999. Also, Katie Bauman, as an alum, was selected but is not able to attend this year, so she'll be recognized next year's class. Scarlet and Gray dinner and auction tickets went on sale last week. Information on the foundation website, WLSCF.org. 60 tickets had been sold as of last Friday. I believe they went over 100 today. Just a reminder, that's the largest fundraising event hosted by the foundation, and the money raised supports teacher grants, the backpack program, the general fund, as well as other initiatives of the foundation. I want to duel out Heidi Myers and Tammy Speaker, who are the volunteers, parents of current students that are putting on that.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
No, I don't have too much update. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Yin.
Okay, first for the park, and the ice rink has been closed, and in April there will be a activity to detrash the Wabash River, and they call for volunteers. So whoever is interested, and yeah, they can sign up on the website. And so yeah, that's for the park. And something to kind of follow up comments and earlier. First of all, I really appreciate that you took a big effort to the the administration, the central office, and all the school leaders took a big effort to celebrate students' excellence. And I feel more and more these days we see the good news from everywhere. It's very encouraging. Actually, just last weekend, and I heard the high school had a phenomenal musical going on, and too bad I missed it, and because of other obligations, and our students and teachers, staff members are just amazing, and the family, parents, all those, and so that's for that. And then another thing, follow up for Dr. Greiner's comments regarding the news regarding the kindergarten roundup, and I wonder. You don't have to answer this question now, but just wondering. And so I wonder whether we have anything like a heads up for kids who never been to preschool, because I heard, probably in our community, the most of kids have been to preschool before they enter the kindergarten, but some kids, especially those kids from low income families, may not have the opportunity to do so, and to help them prepare, also probably make the kindergarten teachers' job a little bit easier if we have any funding to support those kids to have head start for several weeks or something like that. I wonder whether that's possible. You don't have to answer that question, just a kind of a general suggestion, because I heard some of the districts who have more low-income students have that. And so in our school district, we have fewer, let's say 12% of reduced lunch, something like that. But still, we have families who may need help. And so just something to consider. Another thing, I'd like to follow up Mr. Wade's comments regarding micromanagement or cherry picking, those things. I don't agree. And actually, for that, I really appreciate Dr. Greiner and Mrs. Ross's attitude towards my first experience, my suggestions and my share thoughts. You always welcome me to share thoughts. I really, really appreciate that. Actually, I feel, I came from a different country, and I really cherish this opportunity for people to voice, to share perspectives, to have, and this kind of school board arrangement. And we have 7 people, and the reason we have that is different people have different perspectives. We bring diverse ideas, and so we have collective wisdom, and we are paid to do that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to, bring the community concerns to you and for you to consider. And actually, Anna set up a meeting for the parents who have concerns about liability. All those things, I really, really appreciate that. I hope, I know you already did that. You don't treat that as micromanagement. You always appreciate our feedback and input and things we heard from the community. Sometimes people, yes, there's a chain of command for them to follow, but sometimes we have to understand some people don't feel comfortable to tell a particular person about their concern, and that's probably also a culture difference. And at least I know many Asian parents feel uncomfortable to share some feedback. They feel that's a critique, and they feel they might hurt somebody. And so they would rather like to share their concerns with the school board members, and I hope it's okay. And for us to kind of convey some of those, we know sometimes we just tell them, okay, you can tell teachers and about your concern, but sometimes they still like to share, and so I hope it's okay. Another thing is about the cherry pick, and even though today 3 of us supported to put the liability issue on agenda, that doesn't mean we only care about that. And as far as I know, and many, and like Mr. Wang and Ms. Medford, and care about many things. And like after school care program and the bully issues and the students with special needs and the students from low-income families and transparency, many issues. It's just yeah, we support to have a committee for the hireability issue. It doesn't mean we only care about that. And I hope, yeah, that maybe you didn't mean that, but I hope people, yeah, are not misled by that. So that's.
Dr. Yan, in no way would I imply that you only care about one issue. So my concern is more that we as board members recognize that we do not run the day-to-day operation of our school. Also, was there a glass meeting last month? I saw it on the calendar. Was there any news from the glass meeting?
Oh, yes. And Dr. Greiner and I went to that meeting and we heard a presentation and by the glass, the organization, I learned a lot from that. Actually, I was very amazed by the scope of work they have been doing, and so that's an excellent contribution and to the whole community. And they have more than 4,000. They serve more than 4,000 students in our greater Lafayette area, and in our school we have like more than 200 students with student with special needs, and they are more detailed. The presentation is very informative, and also they talk about the lack of special needs, special educators, and so they have to contract some of the work outside, which is actually more costly. And so for that, I also really appreciate all those teachers who work for those kids with special needs.
It's very important to recognize the needs of all of our students. So thank you for reporting on the special services. Anybody else? Any engagement reports? I'm sorry, did I miss you, Brad? Last but not least.
Anybody tired yet? Anyone want to go to the restroom? Raise your hand. Yeah. Bid opening, tree nursery happened at Redevelopment Commission. We're going to get a new tree nursery. We're going to grow our own trees here in West Lafayette. Wellness Center sign, entrance sign is going to be installed. We've contracted for design services for the new Cason Park out on Cumberland Avenue, and that is going to be a very nice park. Everybody's going to enjoy it. Change order on the caretaker's cottage to allow, I think, for some better movement of traffic in and out of the caretaker's cottage. This is a good one. Notarized consent for zoning for .027 acres, corner of State and Brown Street. This is relative to the northeast corner of that intersection of State Street and River Road, I should say. Planned development, 1,200 beds, 525 units, 25,000 square feet of retail, plus parking. Approximate value of the project, $210 million. Part of the Levy Village TIF district. If you're counting, we've got a general fund referendum that collects from those TIF districts. So that would be a nice addition to the community. It's early in the program, early in the game, but we're talking about that. Good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Marley. Sorry about the oversight. Okay. All right, so I will think that we've made it to the end.
Non-agenda items.
Pardon me?
We're not quite to the end. Do we have any non-agenda items?
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, we do not have any communication from the audience on non-agenda items. We do have our next meeting. We have a bit of a gap because of spring break. So our next meeting is Monday, April the 10th at 6:30 p.m. here. Upcoming dates of interest, you can see those on your agenda. We'll pray for no more snow so we can enjoy those snow makeup days. Board documents and audio from this meeting will be posted on the WLCSC website within 7 to 10 days following the board meeting. We understand that there have been some issues with the live stream audio. This is the reason why we provide supplemental audio recording. We're working within the limitations of the technology in the room and doing our best. we're open to suggestions on how to improve that any further, but we've pretty much looked under all the rocks, have we not, Dr. Greiner? We have. Okay. Can I get a motion, please, to adjourn tonight's meeting? Moved by Mr. Wong. Second by Mr. Marley. All those in favor of adjourning, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Julian, we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here tonight.